coverage. I'll see you then.
From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Happy pre-election Friday, friends. My name is Joseph Backholm, and it is my pleasure to be sitting in for Tony today. So glad that you are with us as we head into an important weekend before a very important day. If you have not already voted, and we know that 33 million Americans already have, but there are hundreds of millions likely still to vote. And if you are one of those and you need voter education resources, we have the answers for you. Text the word guide to 67742 to receive a voter guide for your state. Tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, your small group, your church, whoever else to do the same. Again, text the word guide to 67742. And just in case you need the reminder, you spell guide Guide to 67742. Today on the program, a Virginia teacher was fired from his job for failing to comply with pronoun rules. He was also in court today. We'll have an update on that case. In addition, a win in court for 13 Marines who are challenging the military's vaccine mandate. We'll give you the details on that case as well. Later in the program, a majority of Americans under 30 do not believe absolute truth exists. Also, some are calling for COVID amnesty. We'll talk about all of that and whether there's a connection in our worldview conversation coming up in the program today. But first, our headlines. Earlier today, Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee released a 1,000-page report that details whistleblower disclosures, alleging the Biden administration has weaponized the FBI and the Justice Department against its political opponents. The report discloses a rampant culture of manipulation and abuse at the highest level. Joining me now to discuss this is U.S. Representative Andy Biggs. He is a member of the House Judiciary Committee, which released today's report. He represents Arizona's 5th District. Congressman Biggs, good to see you today.
Good to be with you, Joseph.
Well, it's 1,000 pages, probably some good weekend reading for us, but summarize it for us, if you will. What are the key takeaways from this report?
Top line is that the highest levels of the FBI used its power both internationally and domestically to spy on Americans, persecute Americans, investigate Americans for political purposes. Joseph, that's the big takeaway. They abuse their power for political purposes. We can get to more specifics, but they accuse people of being domestic terrorists. They went after parents and observed and watched them when they appeared at school board meetings to protest or speak out. They suppressed evidence of political friends, like in the Hunter Biden case. So that's what that's the top lines. And one of the whistleblowers said that the FBI is rotten to the core.
Can you tell us how many whistleblowers are involved in this report? How many are cited? How many people came forward to contribute to what this report has?
Well, that's proprietary information, but I can tell you that so far there has been somewhere north of 24 whistleblowers that have come between several committees and several members on each of those committees.
That is not an insignificant number because, of course, it takes a lot of courage and there's a lot of vulnerability once you decide to become a whistleblower. I want to go through some of these findings and see if I can get you to expand on them, because as you read down the list, even just the summary list, it is very disturbing. One of them says that the FBI artificially inflated domestic violent extremism statistics for political purposes. Do you know what's going on there?
Yeah. So what we were told is that the management of FBI was pressuring agents, line agents, to miscategorize crimes so that they would miscategorize something from a normal, where they would normally categorize something. Let's say it's a homicide, or let's say it was, some kind of assault or something like that. They were compelling them and forcing them to recategorize those as domestic terrorism. And the reason is because they wanted to use that narrative that the Biden administration has been using nonstop, is this proliferation of domestic terrorism. So what you do, you end up skewing the statistics to say there's more domestic terrorism than ever, and than there really is actually, and then use that to go after individuals and expand the scope of domestic terrorist investigations. By the way, they were doing this at the expense of things like child sex trafficking, sexual abuse. So that gives you an inclination of what we're talking about here.
Well, and if you start connecting the dots, there does seem to be a pattern. We know that there's been a fixation on the events of January 16th and months of hearings try to focus the country's attention on that. President Biden, of course, in his red speech, and he did kind of part two of that this week, right? Where he talks incessantly about MAGA Republicans and the extremists. And there really does seem to be, and this seems consistent with that pattern, an attempt to identify and label and marginalize political opponents as people who are not merely political opponents, but as dangerous. And what you're suggesting here, what the report is suggesting, is that the Department of Justice is part of that?
Yeah. So this is coming right from the top, right from the Biden and his leaders, whether it's Merrick Garland or Christopher Wray. It appears to be coming from the very top leadership, top down. And what they're doing is they're crafting a narrative against their political opponents. I mean, you've got, as you pointed out, and you called it the red speech, I call it the Moloch speech. So when you have this president of the United States basically demonizing, calling out 75 million Americans and their families and loved ones, and saying they are a danger, and then last night reiterating that they are a danger if you don't vote Democrat, that somehow you are trying to undermine the democracy. That goes hand in glove with this notion of creating a feeling, a visceral reaction to people who support conservative ideals, and saying that they're domestic terrorists, that they are the danger. And that's what this is all coming down together, and it's to give them control and power. And that's what's obscene about it, quite frankly.
Another finding that's very concerning is in this report that the FBI is purging employees who refuse to align themselves with the leadership's political ideology. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's what the whistleblowers have reported to us. Is that just like I was talking about, where you had management kind of pressuring line agents to fudge the statistics and data, you're also having people denied promotions, taken off assignments, and basically kind of pushing them out when they have divergent political interests. So if they're conservative, out they go, and it's been infiltrated by Marxists, and that's consistent with all of institutions in America today have been infiltrated by the left, hard left Marxist. And apparently now we're finding out that even the highest levels of our police apparatus at the federal level, DOJ and FBI, are also so infiltrated.
Now, the Department of Justice has been pushing back on accusations like this for quite some time. Here's Attorney General Merrick Garland from August 11th of this year. Let's play clip one.
Faithful adherence to the rule of law is the bedrock principle of the Justice Department and of our democracy. Upholding the rule of law means applying the law evenly, without fear or favor. Under my watch, that is precisely what the Justice Department is doing.
Congressman Biggs, that's what I want the Attorney General to be saying. Are we not to believe him?
Well, I don't only want him to be saying that. I want him to be doing that and making sure his department's doing that. But they're not doing that. What they did is they got in cahoots, and you're going to, as we've seen this with regard to investigating parents who show up at school board meetings, and they put a kind of a label or a tag on them, a special tag, as they watch. And for what reason? Well, you had the School Board Association, National School Board Association, working with this administration to try to come up with a way to go after parents. And so that doesn't mean that you're applying the law evenly. I mean, if you were applying a law evenly and we are a rule of law country, guess what? Then that's how you preserve and protect freedom. But that's not what's happening here. The contrary to the school board issue, you have the Hunter Biden issue. How long did they have that laptop before anything began to break on that? Over a year. And they still haven't investigated. They still haven't proffered any charges. And we've seen all kinds of indications that laptop has indications of criminal conduct. Well, that's not even handed either. So you're protecting your friends and going after your political adversaries.
Congressman Biggs, do you expect any kind of response from the Department of Justice, or is this an issue that will only be dealt with, will get a response should congressional hearings take place if the Republicans take control of the House?
I don't expect any written response. I expect this is going to be a guidepost, if you will, for what that House Judiciary Committee is going to do with investigations vis-a-vis these issues with regarded to the FBI and the DOJ. That's what this is designed to do, to release this out. And I have a feeling that you're going to see us working on that from November 9th onward until we actually get some hearings going. But it's not going to be this witch hunt like you have with the Democrats, the Alinsky style, Rule 12 in particular, where you freeze and isolate and personalize everything. This is going to be going at, tell us the truth. We want the truth. We have to clean this up. As we go forward, we're going to make sure everybody's due process rights are protected.
One other shocking part of this report, a whistleblower alleges that he was told sexual abuse material investigations were no longer an FBI priority. That's outrageous. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the most disturbing portions of this, is that they traded in these investigations of so-called domestic terrorists and fudging those numbers so they could go after more domestic terrorists, more political adversaries. And they traded out these very serious crime of sexual abuse, sexual predation crimes for that. They just squeezed those out and said those are no longer a priority. That is absolutely one of the most dangerous and disturbing aspects of this report. And that we hope to get to the bottom of that and expand on that in part of the investigation as well.
Well, we've noted the FBI and the DOJ's reticence to protect pro-life pregnancy centers and churches who have been subject to more than 100 attacks. But there are people within the Christian community, within the pro-life community, calling for prayer vigils outside these centers during elections. Do you think prayer can accomplish what the Department of Justice may not be accomplishing?
Well, we all need to put our faith in God and hope, have our hope in Him as well, because obviously putting your trust in the arm of the flesh is not the answer in all things. It should be helpful because we live in this country that was designed to give us freedom of religion and speech and assembly, but we're seeing that abused by the arm of the flesh today. So I would say work as if everything depends on you, but have faith and trust in God and that things are going to work out, because I do believe they will work out as we do our part and trust in Heavenly Father.
And that's why we can be happy warriors. Congressman Andy Biggs, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Joseph.
Coming up next, oral arguments took place at the Virginia Supreme Court today.